are you doing? Yeah, good. Yeah, cool. What's that? Yeah, I know it's early, 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 early. I recognize that. So, and I try to make it relatively easygoing when I jump in. But completely slipped my mind until last. What is your email so I can email you? Oh, right. Yeah, some of you guys might not be set up on F-Track, right? So you can give me. You guys know the formula for email addresses at the university for lecturers and things like that? It's like my first name dot last name. So it's al.kang at uwtsd.ac.uk. So if you're trying to email somebody, it's just that. Phil.organ at uwtsd. So you should be able to find us. Okay. So we're going to dive into some landscape creating today. Oh, excuse me. I built a real super quick one last night just as a refresher because I think I may have only built landscapes inside of Unreal twice in the last maybe 10 years. I've built loads of landscapes before, but there was no details for what to do for the virtual production brief. Okay, I will go over the brief. But I was just going to say, back in the day, classically the way we made terrains was to either scope them and generate a height map, which is still applicable, which you'll see today, and we'd put that in, but then we'd have to manually create our LODing system, right? So that was sort of how we did it. And Unreal Engine implemented this landscape system that is just phenomenal. I was actually teaching here when it dropped in Unreal. And the big thing for me is procedural tessellation based on distance to camera. So that was phenomenal. Just watching the fact that it could, on the fly, retessellate a landscape based on how far away you were. Wow, amazing. And they incorporated a lot of the, I'm going to say Mudbox-esque instead of, because it's not quite ZBrush-esque, but Mudbox-esque landscape sculpting tools and painting tools, texture painting tools, which I have been dying to dive into and explore. So although I've built dozens of landscape systems in the past, I've only ever built maybe 2 using Unreal Engine's landscape system. So this will be the 3rd time. One of the things that I will sort of impart upon you as we're going through this is just my philosophies in terms of how I approach landscapes, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. There was something else about, oh yeah, so the texture painting techniques that I'm going to be covering in terms of landscapes involve this non-destructive masking approach that has risen in popularity in the last 10 years or so. The sort of the basic structure of Mari as a texture painter is based on incorporating this selective masking, non-destructive masking technique. Substance Painter has non-destructive masking technique. A lot of concept artists nowadays working inside of Photoshop use quick masks as opposed to what we used to do in the old day, which was just paint overs and using the eraser and all that kind of stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how wonderful it is that we have the ability to use alpha channels creatively in our sort of processes as artists. The one thing that I think, it was more than just a technique-driven thing back in the day. I believe that there were certain issues with alpha sorting in terms of technology back in the day. I believe we only ever played with maybe half a dozen or a dozen different alpha blended layers before it started to become a little bit of a computational problem. I might be severely dating myself here. But in this day and age, with the graphics adapters the way they are, there's no longer an issue with it, and it's a wonderful way of working. So we're going to be taking a look at that in terms of the landscape painting tool. So before we dive in, let's take a second look at the brief. There are no details for what to do. How do you mean there are no details for what to do? Was there accidentally posted up a blank brief or what? Let me let me go check it out, because I believe I attached the link up here as well, right? For the, okay, let's see, where did I put that assignment brief? I thought this was well organized. Links should be in the links. Okay, well, we'll just pop over into Moodle. It'll all be good. There's info on the game, but nothing for virtual production. Oh, I see. Okay, I guess I understand. So with the virtual production, there isn't anything different from the game per se, right? You're basically using the same sort of camera systems and same setup, but as opposed to making an interactive moment, it's non-interactive. It's also whatever you want to make, right? Content-wise, it's an open book for you guys. Let me, I think I better pop over into the Moodle. Let's take a quick look at Moodle.
So on Moodle, I thought you just posted it to the Discord channel.
Oh, that's possible. I was waiting. Oh, I think I was waiting for it to be signed off on. But I didn't want you guys to wait, so I think I posted it straight up on Discord.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's a question. So I need to add AI to the virtual production? Okay, I think perhaps the issue here is that not everybody understands what virtual production is. So maybe I'll spend a little bit of time and talk about what virtual production is, what it's meant to accomplish, and we'll sort of start there, I think. But let me double check in the, oh, there's the assignments. Okay, so the assignment for indie game development, and there are the two briefs. There we go. And indie game development. No, it's there. So coursework, F-Track Production Diary. The link is there. It's not hidden to students. And coursework 1, Game Mechanic Virtual Production Prototype. It's there. So they're both posted on Moodle, right? So you've got that resource as well. Now, the one thing I want to address with the class, because I know that half you guys I haven't talked to before, but the way I post the assignment briefs, there's only ever one brief that I develop on the UWTSD OneDrive, and it's linked everywhere. So if you go, which assignment do I follow? The one on Discord, the one on Moodle? It's the same. It's the same thing. It links to the exact same source file, right? So any changes that I make, I change to the OneDrive file, and it propagates everywhere. If I email you, I'll email you the link to the assignment, right? So the next time you click on that link, you'll get the most recent version, right? So this way, you only ever have to understand that you've just got the one assignment to concern yourselves with, right? Which is the way it should work. Everywhere across the planet. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this first. Okay, so, oh wow, check this out. Microsoft Office Word preloading. All right, so in order to demonstrate you understand the skills in the development of virtual camera systems, that is the key right there, right? And let's take virtual and let's take systems out of it, right? Because I think what ends up happening is you guys start to overcomplicate it in your heads, right? So in order to demonstrate your understanding and skills in the development of camera techniques, right? Or any appropriate game mechanic system, like moving a character around, in games using the Unreal Engine, you are required to complete the tasks outlined below. Implementation, right? Using any combination of the assets provided in Quixel's Megascans library, Unreal Engine's marketplace, design and develop a game of your choice in Unreal Engine or suitable game SDK with approval from me, the module leader. Alternatively, you can utilize Unreal Engine to prototype a virtual production scenario using mobile technologies and a real-time compositing pipeline. I thought I took out the mobile technologies. Damn. Okay, it doesn't have to be mobile technologies. So, translation for you guys, right? All you have to do is get a game mechanic working inside of Unreal, right? A character running around. Alternatively, prototype a virtual production scenario. Just drop a camera in and move it around and tell a bit of a story, right? That's it. There's nothing more to it, right? Now, what I'm telling you is the minimum requirements for a pass, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, which is I'm very infuriated about that. I'll get to it. So, if you would like to use alternative assets, you just got to ask me. That's it. And you don't have to ask me. It's not like I'm asking you to kiss the papal ring. I just want you to check with me so that I know you're not going to screw yourself in the long run. I know that you're not, you might say, hey, Al, I want to use this asset. It's like a 7,000 joint character with 50 different controls and the resolution is 8 million polygons. Can I use it? Right? So that's why I want to check it. I just want to go, well, no, you're gonna pull your hair out all hours of the morning trying to get it run at 30 frames a second in a game engine, right? So that's the only reason I want to check with you guys. Make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew, right? Your prototype should have the essential elements of an in-game camera system. That also applies to virtual production, right? Because you are using a camera, arguably not a system, but a camera in-game, right? This is why I focused specifically on the camera system, because it is the one glue that crosses over between the two project types, right? And it's got to be fluid and intuitive in terms of complementing and enhancing the gameplay experience. It should include a variety of scripts and or blueprints that you have created, which incorporates a good range of code implementation techniques for games, right? So, for example, controlling physics, controlling animation, UI elements, level implementation and progression, just whatever you want to build out, right? If your game system or game mechanic is just traveling through a set of UI menus, that's good. That counts. I'm still looking for whether or not it's intuitive, fluid, clever, right? And has that sort of commercial production experience, right? A lot of people don't know that there's a whole front end department, usually sometimes 2 guys, sometimes as many as a dozen, that deal with just the UX design of the game, right? They used to be called front end, but I'm not sure what they're called now. And they're basically graphic designers and web designers. And they design the menu systems, the character select screens, all that kind of business, right? So if that's your forte, that's cool. You can do that too, right? Create a compressed, and the rest is just handing it in, right? It's like with the game brief. So in turn, I need to add AI to the virtual production. No, the issue is that you said it's like with the game brief. So in turn, I need to add AI to the virtual production. I'm just confused. Maz, you might have misunderstood me, because AI is not generally used in virtual production at all. I can't even see where it would fit, other than if you had a massive crowd system, say you had a herd of animals in the background or a horde of zombies. But even then, you wouldn't really use that in virtual production. Okay, so so you're confused about virtual productions. Let's take a look at it, right? So, I don't know. I guess we will take a look at the Mandalorian one. I haven't seen it, so I may stop it if it starts to get a little bit intense. But perhaps it'll give you a flavor. Oh, I know. There's the Matt Workman Unreal Engine virtual production thing with a motorcycle guy. Let me do that. Unreal. in sense of technicality. What we need to add in virtual productions in sense of technicality. Okay. Let's see if this clears it up. Now I'm getting confused. All right. So, all right. So while this is, yeah, I think this is a short one. Okay, so I'll dive into this in just a sec. Now, one of the things that I'll talk a little bit about is sort of a little bit of a background history, right? So when we take a look at CG production for visual effects and for animation, right? Generally, one of the largest bottlenecks in terms of visual development for sort of feature film or television is the rendering pipeline, right? So the rendering pipeline is a huge thing because to get sort of a certain visual quality that pleases the director, oftentimes you would develop these CG environments that would take like months to render, weeks and months to render before anybody could actually see it, right? So that was a huge issue for the longest time. And it was the massive thing that separated real-time graphics from what we call offline rendering, right? And that is the sheer render time. Now, the benefit of offline rendering is that you could achieve levels of realism and detail that could not be touched by any real-time engine on the planet, right? In fact, when Unreal Engine started to gain in popularity for its stunning visual quality in real time, a lot of us, myself included, would look at it and go, yeah, it looks great, but well, you know, I mean, they're sacrificing a lot. I don't know what they're sacrificing, but they're sacrificing a lot to try to get it at like 30 frames a second. I don't know. I'm going to stick with my offline render. So we'd be building our frames and sending off to the renderer at 1 minute or 10 minutes a frame and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. So Unreal Engine 4.2 or so, or probably even earlier, right, comes out and achieves a level of realism that we've never seen before, ever. And it just looks phenomenally beautiful, right? And then still people are just kind of like, well, it's a game engine, right? I'm not going to be making the next Avengers movie inside a game engine. And the quality of the graphics are getting better and better and better with each iteration of the Unreal Engine, right? So a bunch of artists decided, you know what? Let's give this a go. Let's see if we can render out things in real time and composite them together with live action footage and see if we can fool people, right? So I'm misreferencing this, but Rogue One, I think, may have been one of the first to successfully pull that off. So if you see the feature film Rogue One, a lot of the assets, a lot of the environments, and the KS209 or K something or other, the principal droid on the Rebellion side, he was rendered entirely out of Unreal, right? So that turned a lot of heads, right? A lot of people said, okay, my God, we can do this inside a game engine and we can fool people. The benefit is that directors can see exactly their vision on set at the time. A little bit of background information as well that I forgot to introduce. So when I was working on Most Wanted, I was part of the green screen shoot. You know, this is one of the things that first sort of sparked my curiosity and interest in terms of this sort of virtual production. And the idea of the cinematics in Most Wanted is to have live action actors composited into the CG backgrounds of the game, right? So the end result is questionable. We'll not talk about that. I thought Habib did a fairly brilliant job. Well, and the team actually, God, I'm giving credit to one person. So I was there on set, and how it worked was we had the actors in a green screen stage. We'd capture them. We had Roger and myself and a couple of other guys sort of manning a bunch of computers just off the set. Roger had a bunch of After Effects templates. It was feeding into a Premiere type timeline, and there was an Xbox 360 set up there feeding renders to the editing pipeline, right? And so what would happen is the director would shoot the actor in the green screen and then come behind the review monitors to what's called a video village and would just be able to see it straight away. The actor sort of garbage comped into the CG set, right? So this actually got not only myself, but everybody thinking, wow, you know, the possibilities of using a game engine to create stunning visuals, it's the potential's amazing, right? So fast forward to this. I guess I'll pick, I'm going to just pick the Sizzle, right? Because that's all we need to take a look at so far. Now, there's going to be live action footage featured in this, but don't worry about that, right? It's not really about the live action footage per se. And we'll get to that in a second, right? So let me play the Sizzle Reel through. This frame probably describes how the Unreal Engine is sort of being utilized, right? So we've got a live action actor, and we've got what are called LED screens or an LED volume. And what's projected onto the back is the Unreal Engine environment, right? So that's essentially what's happening, right? Oh, did somebody say something? Ah, you're joking. That's, man, my bad. Okay, hang on a sec. All right. So I was just talking about this, right? So we got a live action actor. We got CG background being generated inside of Unreal. Again, this kind of thing. The character actor is walking around in a green screen volume, right? Now, here's the confusing bit. There are two techniques that are shown in this Sizzle Reel. One, to shoot inside of a green screen, which is what's going on here, right? Or a green volume. And he's being live composited into the background that's generated on Unreal. And then there's the LED volume. Now, the LED volume is different in that the live action actor is being shot and there's LED monitors doing basically rear projection on the background with the Unreal Engine set. The industry is moving towards this LED screen projection technique because the actors performing in the on the set decorated stage bit can actually be lit by the colors and the intensities of the actual environment lights emanating from the LED screens, resulting in more realistic and more believable lighting, right? So, you know, if we go back to the green screen dude walking around in the environment here, I mean, I don't know about you guys. If you can see it, I can see it straight away because, you know, my eyes been practiced in that regard, but he really stands out. Looks like he's been cookie cuttered out and pasted over top of another image. That primarily has to do with the way he's lit, right? So the lighting does not match. This is studio lighting. He's being hit with a 4K light or a 2K light set up over here. And it looks like there might be some bounce light coming this way, but that's it. He's not being lit by the sun. He's not being lit by the bounce light coming off the rocks in the water. None of that, right? So that's the disadvantage of using a green screen, right? And then, let's see. So again, the advantage of using the rear projection technique using LED screens is that the actors can be fully lit by their environment, right? Now let's find a good shot that sort of demonstrates this. Okay, so, well, oops, missed it. So for something like this, slightly more believable, right? She looks a little bit more integrated into the shot, right? Because she's being partially lit by the light events that are happening in the CG environment, right? Okay. I want to go to motorbike guy. Oh, this might give some good sort of indication of what you get, right? So again, because she's being partially lit by the environment, there's a small sense that she's actually there. Okay, so that's... Well, you guys get the idea, right? So let me show you the kinds of things that are kind of sort of happening with indie productions and students and things like that, right? So let's take a look at the Unreal. I think I'll find it with the Vive. Holy cow. I'm typing and it's just, what? Holy cow. What is running? Something's slowing me down. Okay. So let's look at the Unreal and the Vive controller. Composure. So Unreal Engine, understanding that this was an opening field that was starting to get taken seriously, developed their Composure Framework, which is their real-time compositing framework, right? And once they implemented this real-time compositing, and what that means is you can shoot an actor in front of a green screen and immediately pick that green screen out. A process that would generally, take a little bit of time to do could now happen in real time, right? So you would get things like this. Oh, come on. There we go, right? Right? So you can see how fantastic a result you're getting from this type of thing, right? Okay, so there's that. You get that idea. The last thing I'm going to show you is everything that I've shown you has taken place in a studio and is quite unachievable for you guys. So how does this all sort of fit into what it is that you have to do, and also why? We'll talk a little bit about why in just a second, right? So I think maybe Steve, you might have posted this. It was the little Unreal Engine test with a Boba Fett figurine, and the person was recreating the Mandalorian virtual production thing.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it was Ewan that posted it.
Was it Ewan? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What were the search terms for it again? Just trying to remember. Oof, Christ.
I think it was like, I created Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the one we created the film.
Yeah.
IGD.
Oh, yeah, is it? Okay, yeah, let me check it out. So I'm just gonna pop over to the IGD and we will see if we can find it. Oh, there you go. Yes, that's the one. Right. Okay, so let's get back to how this pertains to you guys, because I don't expect you to go out and shoot green screen footage of live actors. Now, there are a lot of different things that are available inside of Unreal that you can utilize in your process, right? And that's why I had the introductory lecture where we talked about how to get Composure to work, how to feed a video image into Composure. So I believe in the first lecture, I streamed video from the Epic website. So you had the video there, and then I brought the CG elements into Composure, created a layer, and then we put a CG element on top of the video layer. That's something you guys can do, right? You don't have to get out and go out and shoot footage of an actor. There's so much stock footage out there available for you guys to sort of bring in. But it's not really about the compositing. It's about being able to put a virtual camera system in there and put in some nice camera moves and things like that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But if you wanted to, you can go as far as this dude did. I think this dude used, did he use his iPhone? Oh no, he used the Oculus. All right, okay. Let's go over to the end result. Okay, so he's got a little bit higher end camera kit, right? Let's sort of ignore that for a second, right? Because you can do this with your iPhone, right? So all he's doing is he's using a curved monitor as his LED screen, which is perfectly fine, right? And obviously an action figure, et cetera, right? So you can go this level as well, which I encourage because it's quite interesting to try something like this, right? But this is the opposite of what I just said, right? So in my lectures, we talked about streaming and video footage and putting a CG element on top. This is the opposite. CG background with a live action element on top, right? Little bit harder to achieve, right? Because you need a green screen or you need a monitor to project your environment. This guy's got a curved monitor. It doesn't have to be a curved monitor. It can be just your monitor you're looking at now, right? The important thing to consider is not that you accurately replicate Hollywood level sort of virtual production. It's more about understanding the concepts and understanding the bits and pieces of Unreal that you need to kind of bring to bear to sort of bring this kind of thing to life. I also leave open the option of doing a completely animated virtual production thing because Unreal Engine is also used virtually for pre-visualization, right? So let me talk a little bit about that. And this all falls under the heading of virtual production, right? Previs, change the game with game engines. Virtual production, Unreal Engine, right? So I'm just going to find a clip here. Now, I know it's the Avengers. I know that's a lofty goal. I'm not asking you to kind of hit that goal. I'm just trying to show you how the game engines are being used, right? So you can be entirely in Unreal. Entirely, right? This is an Unreal Engine. This is a CG character mapped with mocap data or keyframe animated. These are CG trees. This is all in Unreal. What I call full siege, right? It's fully CG, right? So you can do that. So now we've got three options that I've shown you, right? So you can either put a CG prop into a live plate. You can put a live character or prop into a CG plate, or you can do a full siege virtual production. The only difference between this and sort of a game is that there's no controller. There's no interactivity, right? Now, with an interactive scenario, you've got to build a system, right? A very basic one. I'd be just happy if you had to walk, to run, to jump. That's it, right? That's good enough for me, right? So, in lieu of that, right, the game, those who choose the indie game route will be working on a system, but they have no control over the camera. So the camera is just going to be your bog standard third person, first person, whatever camera, right? The opposite of that is virtual production. No control system, but some very complex camera shots, right? The cameras have got to tell a story, right? Okay, so that's the sort of the preamble on that. So I can use Blender Maya for full siege virtual production. Yes, you can. Don't spend time building complex sets and characters. Remember, the point of the assignment is to implement camera shots in Unreal, right? So to give you an idea of the mistakes that students occasionally make, and things to avoid, let's go over to the Avengers previs bit. If I can find it in here. Oh, there we go. Right? Look at that. Right? Just take a very, very close and careful look at this. Right? It looks awful. Right? The characters are probably default characters pulled from a library. These props are just thrown together really super quick because it is not about that. It is not about going inside Blender or in Maya and making beautiful characters, right? It's not about that.
It's on a live action movie set. From a studio perspective, it's a bargain. Not that high relative to reshoots on a live action movie set. From a studio perspective,
let's take a look at
a movie that's going to be crappy because I've seen it ahead of time, because that's a huge savings.
The major change was
let me
to a really good sense of what the actual movie's going to be.
these are a little bit more detailed than I expect,
Video game.
but let's
The director is.
let's see if we can find.
But they're the things that are going to hold your audience. Does the emotion work? And are you engaged? And if you're engaged when it looks like a video game, it's only going to be that much better when it's live action. Ahead of time. Is that?
Let me. You know what would be a good idea is to just take a real quick look at a previous reel, because that's going to give you guys a better indication, I think. I don't want you guys to be distracted making beautiful models. I mean, you try to make them good looking to a certain degree, right? Oh, here you go. Oh, this is not using Unreal Engine. This is where I come from. When I was back in the day, these are the previs reels I used to make, right? And this is done entirely in Maya, right? Now, the reason why I'm showing this is because the quality level shouldn't be much higher than that, right? It's really about, well, what is it about? Check it out. It's about the camera moves. It's about the choreography of the movement of the actors in the shot. It's about the story that each shot is telling, right? And it's got, the goal of previs is it's got to excite you at that level, And then you know your camera systems are working and everything's working, right? Even the animation is awful, right? But, you know, with the layered sound effects. Oh, crazy! Sorry, I'm actually getting engrossed. I'm actually getting engrossed, which means it's done its job. I'm like, oh, how are they setting this up? Oh, okay. But I mean, yeah, that's the point of it, right? So it's got to capture that particular feeling, right? Now, I'd like to see visual development. How far do you go with that visual development? Well, first of all, any questions about that? I'm hoping that clears it up a little bit. Yeah, it's a previs. It's a previs. But yes, they did look absolutely chilled. Okay, I'm glad, Maz. Again, my apologies. I think no. I was showing you what it used to be like back in the day with the Meg thing that was done entirely in Maya, and it's all gray and everything like that. You have to use Unreal or a game engine for this, and I'll tell you the reason why. It has more to do with me saying, well, you got to do it in a game engine. The whole field of virtual production has opened up for game artists, i.e. you've got more job opportunities, way more, right? And what the industry is now looking for are people who are good at using Unreal. right? That's what they're looking for, right? I mean, that's what I encountered actually when I was doing the freelance stuff for Discovery of Witches. They're just like, can you build this prototype in Unreal, right? It's just another avenue for you guys to explore more job opportunities, something else to add to your show reel. Now, you don't have to do virtual production if you don't want to, right? I want to. I love it. I think it's great. It's good fun, right? It's not meant to be considered, oh my God, do I have to do this? Right? It's an option for you guys. If you're just like, virtual production, why do I have to do that? No, you don't have to do that. That's why I gave you the option to do a game mechanic or a game system, right? So if you're that way inclined, that's fine. There are some of you out there I know I've taught who are just like, I love just creating game art. I don't know how to put together a character and a control system. I just like to create good game art. Then the virtual production is an option for you because it's not that complicated. I went through the sequencer thing. I'll go through it again if you guys need to. Set up your camera shots. Do a little sequence in a level sequencer. Boom, that's it. Make a nice little story, right? Because I understand that on a game team, there are typically two mindsets. One that's more technical, i.e. those who gravitate towards the design side. And then there are those who are much more creative, who tend towards the art side, the writing side, the shot design side, right? So this is my attempt to say, look, Unreal Engine unifies you guys, but you have the ability to explore either discipline, right? That's it. That's at the heart of it. Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and then we're going to get on with this lecture. Thankfully, I've got you for 2 slots today. Is this idea, okay, I want it arted up. How far do I need to go? How far do I need to go to art it up, right? I am going to pause the Twitch stream for a quick second here. Pause this. I don't want to get in trouble. So we're going to pop over into my content folder and my level maps. I want to go up to the main map. And we'll take a look at it, right? I'm also, as this level is loading, I'm also realizing I probably have 1, maybe 2 more lessons with you guys about virtual camera systems. So I better get on it. But I did want to talk a bit about landscaping. Right? It's the reason why I want to talk about landscaping is it takes the blueprinting that I talked about with the simple flickering light, takes it to like another level. Well, not the blueprinting, but working with nodes. And then the whole camera system thing will take it up another notch as well. Maybe I'll touch on it briefly. My apologies for the long loading times. This virtual production environment, Unreal project is getting larger and larger and larger. So. And this is a good opportunity. I've shown you videos of high-end productions using virtual production. I've shown you hobbyists doing the hobby level thing. I've shown you where the idea of previs comes from. And then I'm going to show you stuff I did that was used in production on an actual TV show that will be aired next year, right? So you get kind of a taste and a flavor for it, right? It was a lot of fun to do. I mean, I love it. Those of you who know me know that I love cinematic narrative more than anything. Okay, so again, this is just another kind of, ooh, we're going really super fast, right? So this is another really, really simple virtual production prototype. The characters are not even moving because this is one of those scenarios where the director and the DOP want to sit down and they want to figure out how they're going to shoot this scene. You know, whether they're going to shoot sort of over the shoulder on the character or what they're going to do, right? Now, it's very limiting moving just this camera around, right? So if we come in and play this guy, I think I broke the camera system the other day. Hopefully it's working. I have to sit down and fix it, I think. So this is slightly different. This utilizes the technology of Unreal Engine's built-in virtual camera system. The most noticeable demonstration of that, I think, will be focus distance, maybe? Is it broken? It might be broken. Let me see if I can play this in a new editor window and see what we get. Okay, so there we go. So we get a little bit more additional features than you would sort of normally get in your typical camera system. The big one I wanted to point out is just depth of field, right? So we got a foreground guy kind of blurred out and the main actor looking at the tree. She's in perfect focus, right? So it's this idea of taking a regular Unreal Engine camera. Well, you don't even have to take an Unreal Engine camera and build it out. You have to just use a Cine Camera actor, which I'll show you guys, and just play with it, really, and get something cool with it, right? So let me pop over, because I've got a bare Cine Camera actor in the other level. So I'm going to flip back over to the original level, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So here's another example of how virtual production is being used, right? To help prototype and sort of feel out a sequence that will eventually need visual effects, right? So let's pop back to the helipad, which I'm going to be using anyway today, and we'll load that up. So the whole point of this module is that you use a game engine of one flavor or another to put together a virtual production piece, if that is what you want to do, right? Okay, so back here, let me, yeah, you know what? I'll just real quick come in here and where's the basic? Let's see if I can bring in a basic camera. It's not, that's the simple virtual camera, and it's the Cine Camera actors. I can't for the life of me figure out or remember how to create a bog standard camera. But let's take a look at the Cine Camera actor, right? So the Cine Camera actor is more than just your regular camera. It has a few additional features built into it to help it replicate a real world camera, right? So here we got focal length, which you saw me controlling in the demo. We got focus settings, we've got aperture, exposure control, all kinds of stuff, right? We have a post-process volume attached to this camera, which allows you to do bloom, exposure, depth of field, dirt masks, lens flares, all kinds of very, very cool stuff, right? So at the heart of it, just create a level sequence, bring in a Cine Camera actor, bring in whatever props that you want, set dress it the way you want, set up your camera shots to tell a story, then play with some of these dials and switches to see if you can enhance the emotional impact of your shots with some really, really wonderful creative focus or lens flares or things like that, you know. So that'll help you achieve that assignment, right? Now, what sort of quality level do you stop at, right? Well, that is sort of up to you. If you can pull it off in time, you can give me a full siege shot with virtual cameras and everything, with a live action actor in front of it that looks like it might have been a plate right out of the Avengers movies, right? And you will definitely get first for that, right? So you can go all the way that high if you want. I can tell you categorically right off the bat, you probably won't be able to do it. No, you will definitely not be able to do it. Because and it's not because I'm trying to shoot you guys down and crush your creativity. But what a lot of people forget is that like a full siege shot from the Avengers movies probably took like 30 people, very experienced CG artists working on it day in and day out for a month to put it together. So you on your own, if this is the first time you've experienced CG, the very first time you're doing CG, to achieve Avengers level quality equal to a team of 30 people, I have my doubts, right? So don't set yourselves too lofty a goal. Remember, what you see in the movies, or actually what you play in a game, usually has more than just one person putting it together, right? And definitely more than one more than one person, but definitely each of those people have more than just a year's worth of experience in terms of CG and real-time graphics. So just be careful, right? Okay, so the other thing is a personal pet peeve of mine, right? But very important to kind of mention. I oftentimes get people asking me what's the minimum requirement for the brief, and I cannot stand that. I cannot stomach that, right? Because what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Just want to pass this course? It's not like any other university course. This is like you get to bring your imagination to life, right? You get to, play in fantastic imaginative worlds and create all kinds of complex systems. I mean, you're making your own video game, right? So what is the minimum requirement? That's not what you should be looking for. You should be looking for the maximum that makes you happy, right? The maximum that where you can sit back and go, yeah, I freaking love this. I made that, right? For two reasons, right? Number one, forget you're in school. This is not about school. Because if there were school, I'd be teaching you maths, English, religious education, and PE. This is not school. This is not homework, right? It's not, right? I mean, this is about witches battling each other in an abandoned set. Like, I mean, how freaking cool is that? That's not homework. That's the stuff I'd be doing on my job time and on my off time, right? So you got to look at it that way. And number two, the number one thing that people look for in the games and visual effects industries is passion. It sounds like lofty and airy-fairy, but no, it's 100% true. When we're on the hiring line, we're looking for people who are passionate, who want to be there. You're not there to make money. You're not there to just collect a paycheck, although that's part of it. You want to be paid for your hard work. But you know what I mean? You're not going to get a job at a game company because you need to make a living. Right? That's not what it's about, right? You are arguably here because you really, 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 really freaking want this, right? So don't ever ask me what the minimum requirement on the brief is, right? What I am looking for is the brief and then some, right? And I've used this example with some of you guys in the past, and we'll leave it at that because I'm anecdote heavy. But one of the exercises I had to do in animation school, right, is a frog and a fly. And we were being taught the wave principle, and all you had to do was have the frog flip the tongue out and catch the fly. That was the assignment brief. That is what everybody did in the past. That is what everybody continues to do today, right? Is that what I did? No. I put together a 7-shot short film with music about a confrontation between a fly versus a frog, right? And they had a battle. And then ultimately the fly lost, right? And because I did that, I got hired straight out of animation school, right? Was it on the brief? No. Was it expected of me? Did the lecturer tell me he wanted that? No. So why did I do it? Why did I do it? Because I got lost in it. I got lost in it. I literally sat down and went, oh, this is going to be so cool. And I just barfed out 7 shots. Because I was into it. Did I know it was going to get me a job? No. I just freaking wanted to do it. That is what's going to get you hired. Hey? Okay, that's it. Enough pontificating. My apologies. Any questions about that? I know I'm my little anecdote is advocating being overworked and underpaid. Yes, I know. I realize that. I apologize for that, but I can't help it. It's just no matter what salary I get at an animation studio, I'm always like, I'm in an animation studio, woo! You know, and then off I go, right? And it's not everybody, right? You know, but it's something to consider. Okay, any questions? Oh, I will turn on the. Actually, I'm gonna flip back over to be right back because I want to get a refill of my coffee. Then we'll dive into the landscape. Okay, I wanted to start off that way, but 9 a.m. in the morning, perhaps it was better that I started off with a little explanation about virtual production. Helps us to ease into things. Now, for the landscape lecture, I'll also be referring to my notes a little bit. Hopefully, it won't be start and stop. It's fairly straightforward to set this up. But again, this is like the third time I've done it, so I might be referring to my notes. But we'll work our way through it. Okay, I will be back with a fresh cup of coffee. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm back. All right. So, I'm going to walk you guys through this pretty slow. Well, not pretty slow. Well, let's just dive in. Take it from there. Okay, so I'm going to take my initial landscape and we'll kill it for now. And I'm going to get rid of my LiDAR scan as well. And we'll kill that. Right. And yeah, I'm going to leave my ghosted hospital there for sort of reference, right? Okay, so there's a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today that might not necessarily be entirely about the landscape creation. Well, I'm just going to explain some concepts along the way, right? And we'll start off with our first concept, which is height maps. And for this, I'll probably bring up ZBrush. And I'll incorporate that into what I'm talking about in terms of getting our landscape initially set up. Right? So do you guys know what height maps are? You guys heard of height maps?
Yeah, it's I know what it is, but I'm describe it now. Basically,
Okay.
Just blacks to whites, like just white is 0, black is 1. It's a great in between to create height.
Yes, yes, absolutely, right? It's a map which is high, sort of. It's actually a displacement map, right? Just to let you guys know, right? The other word for displacement map is height map, right? And I'll show you essentially what's at the heart of it. So to do that, I'm actually going to use ZBrush, right? Because it's the quickest way, I think, to show you how displacements work in theory, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, let's go on and create a plane, right? So I'm just going to create a plane. So we got that piece of geometry there. I'm going to put my skin shaded thing on there. And I'm going to check my poly frame. It's a little bit low, so I'm going to Control D this guy. And Control D it up a little bit more. Let's get nice and high with this, right? Okay, so let's say we've got a surface. Let me do this, and we will. Is there a good one in here somewhere? Let's try something like this. All right, so let's say come in here and oh, what's going on with my left click? What? Come on. I'm using my son's mouse. Maybe he set something. Let me see if I can do Alt. First, turn this into a polymesh 3D. Oh, just because it wasn't a polymesh object. That's really weird. Okay, so I've converted this to a polymesh object, and I'm just gonna make 500,000 polys, right? So I'm gonna come in here, create this kind of detail, right? We've got some artifacting, so I might smooth it out to get rid of that artifacting, right? Maybe we'll create something over here. Turn off that stupid lazy mouse. I think it's under here. Where are you? Brush, stroke. Oh, lazy mouse is off. It's just being slow. All right. So let's say we got sort of surface topology like that, right? Okay. So what a height map is I'm going to flip over here and I'm going to go to my switch this and we'll go to my there we go. I'm going to go to my MRGB grabber. Where are you? Where's the grabber tool? There it is. Okay, and we will Control N. Okay, so what a displacement map basically is a black and white texture. You're absolutely right. But what its primary function is to capture the information that can later be used to rebuild geometry, right? And typically a displacement map is used to rebuild geometry at render time, right? So what that means, it might not be that important for you guys, but it means that geometry detail doesn't have to be calculated every single frame prior to render time, and you send it to render, and et cetera, all that geometry is calculated. It's actually stored in a texture map, which is a little bit more efficient, and then brought to life the minute a render pass is sent to the GPU to be calculated, or the CPU, right? So how this generally tends to work is if we were to come in here and create just a plane, we would send that to the render engine, right? And the renderer would grab that alpha map and, oh, I got to turn this into a polymesh 3D, and recreate that for you, right? So let me turn the intensity up. This is really important because the intensity plays into it, right? So I'm actually recreating, this is what the renderer is doing with your height map or displacement map. It's taking that piece of geometry, and let's say we've sent a render pass calculation off to sort of be calculated. It would just render it like this. Now, displacement maps and height maps have a variety of different controls that you need to adjust for it to work properly. And that is replicated by the Z intensity, but the amount of displacement is something that you set in your renderer, and et cetera, et cetera. But again, all of that stuff is stored in a black and white texture map. And that's what we're going to be working with initially when we build our landscape, right? So that's a height map for you, at least basically in theory. Whoa, there's my face. Why don't I stick that down there? Nah. Okay, so let's pop back in here. So I want to create a landscape here. So let's kind of get into it. So where do we access the ability to create landscapes? We've got our basic object types down here. Well, Unreal Engine has bundled its landscape tool, its folio tool, and its vertex painting tools as sort of separate UI that you can access inside of Unreal. So if you're inside of Maya, you know how I showed like you can flip from the animation menu to the modeling menu to the rendering menu set. It's all taking place inside of Maya. You're just changing the UI a little bit, kind of like that, right? So there's an area where you can actually go into landscape mode. And there we go, right? So this to me is actually, let me get rid of the tape recorder. I don't need that. I'm just going to pop that. I'll just close that, right? So this is where the magic happens in terms of creating the landscape, right? We have this procedural grid. Now, we are only in creation mode, meaning we have to set a few parameters, and then when we hit create, it'll go and finalize all those parameters and then bring in the geometry for you, right? Now, inside the landscape tool, we can just create new, and then we can switch over to our sculpting tools, and we can start sculpting. Oh no, we have to create it first, and then we can actually sculpt on this geometry, right? And we can build out a landscape and sculpt the mountains. There's some very interesting brushes that are available to you, like an erosion flow brush and a hydro brush, and how those work is that they mimic the way kind of rivers and lakes and things like that carve into the rock, and it's really, really cool, right? So we can sculpt it. We can go to an external tool, right? Like World Machine. I'll let that load up. So we've got the ability to sculpt landscapes on our own and be as artistic and creative as we want. Or we can, as it says here, I wasn't expecting that, stop hand sculpting 3D terrain. And we can create terrain using node-based connections, right? So World Machine is one of the many tools I've used in the past. There's like two of the major ones that compete with each other are World Machine and I think TerraGen, right? And so how you end up using World Machine, if they have a screenshot, they may not have a screenshot, but you connect up nodes together to dictate things like wind patterns, erosion, water, time, right? You can say, oh, this has been happening to this landmass over X number of years, et cetera, plug it all in, and it'll automatically generate a procedural terrain for you. And what World Machine or TerraGen do is that you can create it in there, and then you can export out a black and white map, just like I showed you in ZBrush, and import that here. That would be your height map. So I can go to import from file, which is what we're going to do today. And we can create our terrain from that height map. There's an area where we can sort of point towards our height map. And the third option is to get survey data height maps. And all you have to do is type in height maps, right? And you'll get a whole bunch of them, right? All these black and white maps. These are all mountain ranges and things like that, right? So you can grab those. They do need to be in a particular format. You can't just grab JPEGs off of the internet. If you find a black and white terrain map, you got to make sure to save it out as, I believe, a TIFF 16, a PNG that's 16-bit, or there's a proprietary format for height maps called .r16, and they're all recognized by Unreal Engine, right? So let's try that to start off with. Let's go in and import a height map. So I'm going to pop in here. Now I've got a couple of that I've been playing with, right? So these are height maps that I've downloaded from a pack, and I'm just going to, and I've converted them to the PNGs. I'm just going to import that in. Right? So now we'll see a rough idea of what the terrain is going to look like, but this is not exactly how it's going to sort of appear. It's just to give you, it's sort of like a low poly cage version of your environment, right? So I'm gonna take this and super quick, just raise it up, right? It's sort of hard to find an alignment because you don't have the grid lines as a sort of a focus, but that's all right. So I tend to make a few creative decisions at this stage. So for example, the front entrance of this sort of derelict abandoned building is right there. So I want it framed with a mountainscape in the background. So I might take my landscape gizmo, and you saw I had the move tool, right? I might switch over to my rotation tool and just rotate this guy around, you know, until I find a relatively decent looking backdrop. You know what? Maybe. Yeah, that looks all right. Whatever, right? So, yeah, you know, you can position it to your heart's content. Now, in terms of a material, we'll leave that slot blank because we're going to come back to this at a later date. And we'll leave most of the defaults in place in terms of the alpha blending. Bring this out a little bit. And you see I've adjusted the location, the rotation, and scale. Now, let's talk a little bit about the section sizes, right? So if we go to a smaller number in terms of our quad size, right? What that does is it tries to capture a little bit more detail in terms of the surface area, and you see that the map shrunk as well, right? So if you go to a larger size, the map gets a little bit bigger, but sort of the intensity or the frequency of the detail sort of dies off a little bit. So you can play with it. It's one of those things that's, for me, unfortunate because you kind of have to make X number of landscapes to see the end result before you get a feel for how the quads adjust that, right? Sections per component, 1-to-1, we can leave that the way it is. Number of components, we can extend that out, and that is simply the number of squares, right? So if we come over here, I can set that out to 32 to 32, but I'm going to bring that back because, first of all, how it extends it out, I don't know if you can see, it just simply repeats the last set of tiles around the perimeter and stretches that back out, which I kind of don't like the look of. And as well, if you're not careful, a lot of these values can become quite heavy, right? And I've made large landscapes using this tool, and it's just bogged down my entire machine, right? And then the overall resolution, that gives you sort of the fine details of the thing that you're going to create. So let's come in here and just create it, and you guys can see sort of what's going on. The button's called import because what it's actually doing is importing the height map and the height map data and then using that to recreate your terrain. While that's doing its thing, I've skipped past a load of my notes. Let's see if we can get caught up over here. Yeah, there we go. Right. So there we go. You can see that's the kind of terrain that we're getting from that height map. It's pretty cool. So some of the disadvantages, actually, of height maps are the fact that you don't have, you only have one direction that is straight up, right? So you get things like perfectly flat surfaces and things like that. But in terms of height map generation, especially because things like mountains and landscapes are usually distance sort of set dressing, it's usually pretty good, right? So in here, I think, I'm just going to move out here for a sec because I just want to position this guy a little bit better. Let's get that camera speed up a little bit more. Let's crank that. Oh, whoa. Right. Oh, and we want to move the gizmo, right? So, oh yeah, right. Okay, so I want to reposition this landscape that's been created. Now you can see that what I've got in the landscape menu, it's automatically switched me to sculpting mode, and it's shown me that the height map is on a single layer here. We can add layers if we wanted to add more detailing, but I'm not going to get into that right now. If I want to switch to manipulating these guys, notice how there's a few sort of menu items in the world outliner that are grayed out. They're grayed out because they cannot be accessed from landscape mode, right? So if I want to access them, I got to switch back out to select mode. And then you see those guys light up again. And you see I've got my, my gizmo back again, right? So I'm going to position this back. What now, why I'm, do I have to do it that way? Oh, I think I have to manipulate the end result, which makes it a little bit difficult. So there was a hotkey to recenter the gizmo again. It wasn't insert. Do you guys remember what the hotkey was to manipulate the pivot point of an object? I don't remember what it was now. It's like a temp manipulation. Was it the shift key? Do you guys remember it all? How to just move the pivot point? Alt. Was it Alt? No, Alt was no. This no. Alt is to duplicate it. All right. Okay. Oh, I see. No, Alt, but don't grab the gizmo, right? If you grab the gizmo, you're just making a duplicate. Oh, that's cool. That's what I was after, right? Then, okay, so now how do we bring this guy back? What did I just do? Huh. Okay. So I'm moving the, oh no, I'm moving the sky. No, you know what? I'm selecting the sky sphere. I thought it moved the pivot point of the gizmo. Ah, it's okay. I'll, let's see if we can just struggle through it this way. It's going to be intense to move the geometry because it's sort of real-time render heavy. I just want to roughly place this guy. There we go. Ah, good enough. Right. But it's pretty cool. I love using landscape tools and doing landscape sculpting just because it sits your fictional world. It just feels like you're creating a planet. You know, who doesn't like a little bit of terraforming in the morning? All right, I'm just gonna see if I can tweak this up a little bit. Oh, right till I see the scan data start to vanish through the bottom. There we go. That's actually better than my initial setup, actually. That's looking pretty good. Now, you know, when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm constantly art directing, constantly, right? So I'm sort of looking for, when I art direct as well, I'm constantly looking for meaning, right? So what I wanted to do is to say on the left side, it's blocked off like there's no escape, and then the right side leads off to a plane. So there's the possibility of getting out there. It just gives the composition a bit of breathing space. But okay, so let's get into material creation, right? Because that's where the sort of the magic happens. Okay, so I'm gonna pop over into my folders. Now, when it comes to creating Unreal Engine folders, don't be freaked out by all the folders that I have here. But understand that the way you organize your folders comes eventually over time with the number of projects that you either work on or have built yourself. You start to fall into a pattern of how to organize things. Now, I can give you the default that most game studios use. So you'll generally have a content folder that will have props, environments, and things like that. But how you separate out your work is up to you. So I have a separate folder for environments, but I also have a separate folder for materials. Now, here's the kicker. The environment folder also has materials, but they are generally the materials that are directly associated with the prop. If I'm going to create standalone materials, I like to have my own sort of material folders, especially if it's a material that I can apply to several different places, right? Probably not the best way of organizing myself, but I get it, so. All right, so in the environment folder, I've created a terrain auto folder. And I've got my landscape material, which I'm going to walk you through the creation of, an instance of that, which I'll tell you guys the difference between the two, and support folders. One for my textures, and one for my layers, and one for my foliage. I don't know if I'll get to foliage today, but we'll see how far we get. So I'm going to come over here and create another terrain auto folder. Call that 2. Oops. I want to rename this. You might notice I use quite liberally underscores. You can use underscores or full stops to separate words, or you can use what's called Camel Case, right? The thing that you should not use are spaces, because spaces are considered reserved characters, i.e. computer programs and scripting languages interpret a space to mean something. So you kind of want to get in the habit of avoiding it. Camel Case is simply this. You just put a capital letter for every different word, right? So terrain, auto, and then 2. You can use Camel Case as well. But it's a little bit harder to read, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to right click and I'm just going to create a very, very simple material, right? So we're going to come in here and create a material. And I'm going to name this M_landscape. Let's call this landscape auto _2. Which makes me realize I should have probably named the M landscape auto 1, the previous version. That's okay. So I'm going to come in here. I'm also going to right click and I'm going to create a material instance, right? And I'm going to call this M_landscape auto 2 and instance, right? So what is the difference between a material and a material instance, right? Well, the primary functionality of the material is for us to kind of build our material that we want to use. The material instance is a copy of that where we can hide a majority of the dials and switches and just put in sliders that a user can quickly control, right? So it'll be like a simpler, more toned down version. So I'll show you. Let's pop open the material and we can talk a little bit about sort of the difference between the two, right? Where's my material editor? Hello. Oh, there it is, right? So if we open up the material editor, right, we got all of our nodes that we're going to connect up and change and tweak and whatever. But every time we want to make a change to that, we'd have to come in here again and play with all the nodes, etc., right? Which can be quite time consuming and not exactly intuitive. So if we come to, man, I just want to close this window. Come on. All right, so if I come into a material instance, here's what you get. It's a much simpler UI. No blueprint at all. You get what the material looks like, and you get a bunch of dials and switches here that you can adjust, right? The light map settings, etc., etc. So the material instance not only takes all the data from the original, but packages it in a way that's a little bit easier to work with, right? Okay, so let's, actually, I did that incorrectly. just created a material instance. I want to instance this material, right? So there you go. Create material instance, right? There we go. Okay, so there's our material instance. And let's take this guy and we will... actually, we'll do it this way. So I'm going to pop into my landscape here, and you can see that we've got a slot in our landscape. Now, the difference between the two, remember to keep in mind, the landscape gizmo active actor is about placing your landscape, creating it, etc., etc. In fact, I don't think I ever touched this once I've placed my landscape. Then you go into the actual landscape itself, right? And here we've got the landscape material. So we can just drag that instance, drop that there. A few different ways you can connect it, or you can select it and click the connection arrow, which will choose that and connect it up. And so we've got that material being applied. You can see I've got a terrain folder in here. This is where I generally take my two landscapes and pop them in there, right? So that's nice and tidy. Okay, and yeah, we'll jump in and create our layers folder. And what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to create material functions. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a grass material, and I'm going to take a rock material and a gravel material, and I'm going to bring those in. I'm going to apply them onto the landscape. Now, why I want to do this is I'd like to be able to paint layers of grass, layers of rock, etc. that look very, very natural, right? And I want them to transition. So let's say I want the grass to transition to the mountainous rock, right? So to do that, we can layer the textures together inside the landscape material, and we can blend between them. So this is kind of what I'm trying to show you in terms of setting it up. And it's a wonderful way of working, especially in terms of painting landscapes. And you can also apply this to props and other things as well, right? You can easily lift this architecture and apply it to something else, right? So to help facilitate this, I'm going to bring in material functions, right? So material functions are like little packages of existing materials with a layer of added functionality to it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose a material function, right? And this one I'm going to call grass. I believe I call it grass. Take a quick look. Yep, grass. And then just for the sake of making life easier, we'll make one for stone and another one for dirt. And we can make however many transitions we want or we need for this material to sort of work, right? Grass, stone, dirt, weeds, something else, right? As detailed as you want to get. There is another way of painting landscape auto materials using vertex blending, but with the vertex blending, you're limited to RGBA. You can only have 4 different materials. This one, you're not limited at all, right? So I'd love to come back here and experiment with a variety of different transitional materials. So I could have dirt, but I could also have dirt for a path, and then dirt that's more like soil, right? And then I can really, really try, create an intricate dirt, not just dirt. That is something that I'd sit down and I'd do the research or kind of think visually, what would I do if I were sculpting this inside a ZBrush? So I'm just opening up the 3 materials here, right? These guys here in a separate window, right? Because we're gonna hook this up. Right. Now you can see that inside the material function, we have an output result, right? So this is where we're going to put our kind of complex material connections, right? So let me take a quick look. Oh, I'm missing a whole slew of notes. That's just dandy. All right. So that was from yesterday. You know what? I'll just figure it out. Okay, so we've got these empty containers. We need something to put into it, right? Now, this is where you can either sort of explore existing material libraries out there, or you can grab some from the free Unreal Engine Marketplace. I tried to use a Megascans material, but the Megascans material itself is not just a straightforward material. It's a material instance, and material function setup as well. So it introduces this layer of complexity in terms of wanting to, incorporate the Megascan stuff. You can still, by all means, use the textures from Megascans, right? So instead, I'm actually going to come over to where I've got some preloaded textures, and I'm going to copy those guys. And I'm going to pop in here. I'm going to paste that in there. Oh, no, I have to do the move. Sorry. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to migrate these guys. Where are you now? Migrate. There you go. Migrate. So I'm going to migrate my textures folder. No, I don't want to do that. Actually, it's going to move it. Let's just do this. Copy file path. Crazy. I thought I could just copy paste. What is going on? No copy pasting. That's all right. I'll just bring those materials in manually. Oh, there we go. Maybe I'm just impatient. There you go. So we moved those textures over. Now, I could have just referenced where they were in the original folder, but let's just say we're creating a whole new auto landscape material, right? A whole new set of textures. And you can easily swap these out with different textures as well, right? So I'm going to go back up my materials inside here. And where did I put those material definitions? Just going to have a quick look at this landscape auto material because I think that, oops, not that one. I think that maybe I copy pasted these from a different location. Let me just double check this real quick. Oops, not that one. Yep, that one. Yes, I did. Okay. So what I actually did for the dirt, stone, and grass textures was I went into the starter content material in a separate project. So I had two Unreal Engine projects open, right? And so on one monitor, I had the starter content, and I found the dirt texture there. And this is what I did, which I'll do again here, right? I simply went in here, and right before the final material node, there was one more node here, final material node. All I did was just grab this in one project, copied, and pasted it over. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in this particular material. I don't want to set up creating the material, but I'll walk you through it. And we'll start off, let's pop in here too. Let's do that. I'll bring in, there's no point to it. So you can see this make material attributes. What was there prior was exactly the same as this, except with a blue heading, and it was the material that was being applied. So it's basically a self-contained material. What we're trying to do is take that self-contained material, chain it up, so that we have three different materials connected to one, which will apply to the landscape, and then we can paint whatever we want, right? So basically, there's only three real effects that are working inside the shader for this. And this is using what's called Pbr Rendering, which I think I talked about last class, right? So physically based rendering. We have a base color, which is our albedo map, or what the natural color is. We've got roughness, which is very similar to specularity, but it deals with how rough the surface is in terms of how it reflects light. And we've got the normal map, which gives you sort of the bump detail of the surface of that object, right? So let me come over in here, and we'll grab all these guys, move them a little bit out of the way for a second. So let's talk about how we're creating that color, right? So to create that color, what we're doing is we're taking this, this one texture here, which I'll show you. And where is that? There it is. We're taking this one texture, and it could be any texture at all, to add micro variations to the dirt. Otherwise, the dirt will look tiled and et cetera, et cetera. This just breaks it up a little bit. Imagine if you took this as a Photoshop layer and then you multiplied it down and then you changed the opacity and brought the opacity down to maybe 20%. Then you get like a little bit of something unique happening inside your texture. That's what this basically does. It's adding those variations, right? And 3 different types of multiply. And then this is added down to where we have our base color, right? So this is our base color. And let's take a look at that. So this is sort of the basic dirt color, right? So you can see we've got a number of different alpha areas. This will come in handy a little bit later on. But this is being sort of added to the micro variations to add a little bit of the organic difference to the pattern of the texture, right? So this is coming down and it is being piped both into, if you can see that the base color is being piped into where we get that micro variations, multiplied together and ending up in our base color. But we're also reusing that base color map, multiplying it with a couple of constant values and pumping that into roughness, right? And then the last is just a normal map connection. Now we've got this noise texture. Now the noise texture is another thing that a lot of people use, clouds, noise, Perlin noise, etc., to add micro variation to surfaces. It just makes it look less CG, less easy to spot patterns in the texture, and then just breaks it up a bit, makes it look a little bit more organic. So that's being plugged into gradient. Oh yeah, okay, so that's a camera distance based thing. We can ignore that for a minute, but it's being plugged into our normal map, which is then being slightly enhanced or blended with just the base blue, and then being plugged into our normal map, right? So the idea of creating complex shaders is a whole other topic in and of itself, right? You can build out a whole tree of different sort of base colors blending together to come together into your base color channel, same with roughness, etc. Or you could just have a single texture plugged into your base color, which we talked about last class. But what I want to do is I want to take this, it's my dirt, right? So I just want to take the whole thing. Oh, actually, I'm going to create this for you guys. So other than the last node or last couple of nodes, I'm just going to grab all of this stuff and copy it, right? So all of this stuff is how we create the look for the base color, how we create the look for the roughness, how we create the look for the normal map. But where do we put the results? So I'm going to pop back over into my dirt material function, right? And I'm going to move back out here, and I'm just going to hit paste. So here we've got, again, the output of our base. Whoops, I'm going to move this a bit closer. We've got the output of our base color here. We've got the output of our roughness, and then we've got the output of our normal, right? I'm going to squeeze these in here, coming halfway out so we can see what's going on. But we got no place to plug it in here, right? We just have this output result, right? So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to drag off this sort of wire, and I'm going to type in make material attributes. Now, what this does is it's a node that says, okay, I know that I'm going to be sending out material information data, so I'm going to just make all of these different channels that are PBR sort of driven that can accept data from various parts of the shader, right? That's basically it. So I'm going to take the end result of this multiply. Remember, it's multiplying my base color by this micro variations texture, and I'm just going to plug it into the base color here, right? And if I do a save, it should appear there, right? So again, that is purely just the color. Now, if you take a look, you can see where we have the micro variations sort of breaking up the surface a little bit here. And the two are kind of working together, right? Okay, and we're going to come in and grab this lerp node. That's our roughness calculation. We're going to plug that into there. And then before it updates, I'm just going to grab the normal, right? And I'm just going to plug this in into there, right? And then we'll save this guy off. Okay, so why I have the textures loaded, let's pop back out here, into my textures folder here, is because remember I said I had the sample content in an Unreal Engine project open on a separate window, and I copy pasted this network into my function so I could connect it up. Well, the one thing that was missing were the textures. So these guys arrived after I copy pasted with black squares saying texture not found, right? So I copy pasted the textures over, the ones that I needed, and I just simply reconnected these guys up, right? So how did I do that? Well, I selected on this, and then I went to my micro variation texture, selected that, and I clicked the arrow icon, and then it would connect it up. And I had to do that with every single blank node, right? But it's fairly straightforward. All you got to do is find the texture sample 2D node, the 2D parameter node, and you're good, right? So what time? So I'm going to do that with my other textures. So I'm going to close the dirt because I don't need it anymore, right? Now that's my dirt material function ready to go, right? And the benefit again of this is that now I'm just working with one node, right? So when I drag that material function into my master material, I only have the one node to worry about. Ooh, my windows are acting a little funny. So if I were to come back in here and say, all right, let's start building out my master material, right? I've only got one node to play with. I'm actually going to delete all these guys because I'm going to be rebuilding that. Oh, no, wrong one. I was wondering about that. So in here. My apologies, I meant this guy, right? So when I'm working with this guy, I don't have to recreate that whole material. I can just bring in the material function node, boom, it shows up as one button or one node, and I can connect that up, right? So this is the first instance of creating a material dependency. Meaning, when we create our landscape material here, we can't just grab this landscape material and put it anywhere because it's dependent or it's connected to what we just created in here. So it needs all this stuff over here, right, for it to work properly. Okay, my caption window closed. All right, so I'm just popping over to Discord. Terrain Party lets you make a height map from nearly anywhere in the world. Yep, there's that. There's so many different, I think even Google Maps will now spit out height maps. Any kind of geological survey website out there will have height maps. Height maps are everywhere, right? I've since opted to start using real world height maps. I used to be against height maps. I'm just like, I'm just going to sculpt my own mountains. Damn it, I'm an artist. Damn it. But after years of like wasting months sculpting mountains, I just realized, what am I doing here? The audience is not even going to look at the mountains. They're more interested in the central building. So I'm just going to find existing mountains out there. The job's already done. They look fully realistic, and I'm just going to art direct it and find a really, really cool placement for it, right? So yeah, height maps. Big fan now. Okay, so that's basically it. We're going to do the same thing with the grass. I'm going to pop back over into my terrain auto, and we're going to go into my the layers node, and we're going to grab the grass one. Now, again, you can find this material node anywhere. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go through the pain in the ass of showing you how I did it. So I walked you guys through creating the dirt. Let's Let's move to the grass, but I'll show you how I did it. Might as well, right? So I'm going to pop open another Unreal Engine project. This will be good because then I can let you guys create the dirt, grass, and the stone, and then we'll come back and reconvene for the afternoon session, and then we'll connect everything up there. So while that instance of Unreal Engine is opening, any questions at all? Let's see, I'm just going to pop over to the chat. Nope, all good. Okay.
Al,
Yeah.
I'm having an issue where Quixel Bridge doesn't want to download any assets at all.
Okay.
It gets set and cancels.
Okay, right. So I think that has to do with your library location. It's odd to me that it doesn't spit out an error message, you know, because I think it does for me. But I would try redirecting the library somewhere else. I've just clicked on Bridge, so when it opens, I'll show you where that is. Do you know how to set your download library?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, try redirecting it to another drive. Even if the drive you currently have it pointing to has plenty of room, try that. It might help. Yeah. I don't think it's a connection issue because we're chatting right now. So, you know, and I don't think I've ever heard about their server going down. Even if it did, because the games industry and the visual effects industry depend on them, I'm sure they'd have the server back up within the hour. So, I don't think it's that. Oh, I'm asking a lot of my PC today. Got the Bridge opening and a second instance of Unreal Editor. Oh, I don't want to block the... Okay, I'll let that open up. So, sort of to recap, we're basically creating this chain to actually make our lives a little bit easier. It's kind of like this philosophy that I firmly believe in. Whenever you're working in any kind of digital medium, whether it's games or CG, right? The more you upfront, or the more you front load prep, the easier your life becomes when you have to actually execute the thing, which is completely the opposite way. I don't know about you guys, but the opposite way I used to work when I was a student in school. It'd just be like, who cares about prep? You know, who cares about making revision timetables, whatever. I'm just going to wait till my homework's due and I'm going to do it the night before it's due, right? You can't really do that in CG, but it's not something I can teach you or force you to change. You just have to have those moments where the CG software blue screens on you, you're pulling your hair out, or you're trying to get something rendered out and it's just not going to happen before you start to really, really realize that in terms of CG work, you got to front load everything. You got to carefully plan everything. Otherwise, your life is a living nightmare when you're in production. Okay, so let me pop over. I'm just going to open up a material quick because I think in the support window, the support window has that settings icon, right? So if you go to the settings icon and you click on the setting icon here, you've got download settings. Now, this is the confusing part. Maybe not for you, Ewan, but for a lot of people, is that the download will download it to a location on your hard drive, right? Which you can, I thought you could specify it in here. No. But then the export, to finish my thought, the export settings is where you then want to put that in terms of which project, do you want to send it to Maya? Do you want to send it to Unreal, et cetera, et cetera. So there's two locations inside of the Bridge, where you download your assets and then where you export them to, right? So that is sometimes a little bit of confusion, right? So, no. So for my export settings, I can say, look, send it to Unreal, send it to Max, send it to Maya, Blender, Houdini, whatever. This generally says, where is the plugin to make it all happen, right? So I've got a Megascans plugin that's pointing to, and then the default project, which I hate because the project that I'm working on changes on a week-to-week basis, sometimes on a day-to-day basis. I always have to come in here and tell it which project I'm going to. So I hope they change that. But I believe maybe the download settings are in the account settings, perhaps. One of these settings windows will allow you to change where those assets are initially being downloaded to. And I have it pointed to...
It's in edit in the top left.
is it? Ah, there you go. Yeah, okay. So there you go. Edit settings. Ah, perfect. So library path. So mine's going to a global library of CG assets, right? So I'm dumping everything there, and that's on my E drive, right? So that's where you set that up. Okay, so I'm gonna clear this off, and let's I'm gonna create I'm just having a quick look. I don't think I've created this on this machine. I'm just gonna go with a blank project, right? And this one, I'm going to include the starter content, right? And I'm gonna put it under delete this game and harvest assets. That's what I'll call it. I'm gonna create that project. I've got a lot of things going on in the delete this folder. I better go and clean that out at some point. Wow, we got 6 minutes left. I just want to show this one thing. I should have planned ahead and had 2 instances of Unreal already open. Everybody following the structure of the material tree so far? Does it make sense? We'll get to the fun stuff in the afternoon. I mean, even that, I'm looking at that. It's just got that matte, or not that matte, but the black material. I'm like, that looks freaking awesome. I love it. It's just like, you can't beat real life when it comes to creating stuff like this. Just, it's cool, that the detail in it. It's just nice. And the natural way it layers. It's just really sweet. Oh, I don't want to, it should open in a couple minutes or so. I don't want to have to say, well, we'll go grab lunch and I'll come back and show you how to copy paste material trees over. So yeah, while this is opening, so for sort of external reference, there are a number of different auto landscape materials out there and auto landscape tutorials out there. They basically follow the same thing. In fact, if you take a look at a Megascan material, it's basically structured like this. So I'm not teaching anything new or revolutionary, but what I'm doing whilst explaining this to you is hopefully it's given me an opportunity to talk about some very, very basic concepts, you know, especially in terms of things like height maps and how height maps work, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is basically what I did real quick. Went in here, right? Inside the starter content, you've got loads of stuff available that you can play with, and including materials themselves, right? So there's a whole slew of materials here. And yeah, perhaps that's what I'll do. So I'm going to click on Cobblestone Rough, right? And we'll let that one open. I'm going to flip back over to the other project and we'll go to Megascans. Real quick, just to show you kind of what you guys are dealing with. Where's my Megascans folder? Surfaces. We'll go 2K surfaces. So I've got a cobblestone path, and I've got damaged, I'll just open damaged concrete, which is also a Megascan material. So let's take a look at these guys side by side. So here's my cobblestone rough. And here is my damaged concrete, right? So the cobblestone rough is a self-contained material, meaning everything you need is right here. The whole shebang. Everything used to create the base color, the roughness, the normal, all of this stuff. It looks complicated, but if we dive in, it's not really. You know, here we've got a little offset being added to the normal. Well, let's go. Base color is easier to understand, actually. So if we come up here, we can see, well, there's actually not much going on with the base map. It's all happening in the normal map. So we've got a little bit of a bump offset attached to the color map, and it's being multiplied, et cetera, multiplied with other stuff, multiplied. It's just like multiplying Photoshop layers, just enhancing the look and the effect of that color map, right? And you can do whatever you want. You can, blend in. Here, there's blending in some constants, like whatever color it might be, and then just plugging it into your material base color. That's it. That's all that's going on. And this is applied to your object, right? Unlike what we're building, is that we're building this material first and then connecting it to a material function, so we just have one node we can play with. That's it. That's the concept of it. Now, why you can't necessarily work with a Megascan material is that if we open up a Megascan material, it's not a material. It's a material instance, right? So if we go into the material instance, and then we try to open up the parent material, right? The parent material is actually this, right? So it's taken this tiling information, these texture map information, and it's pumped into, with a few adjustments, out to a default material. That is what Megascans is using. So Megascans, that's the base material, so I can't just grab this material and apply it to anything. Unlike this, which is self-contained, I can grab this and apply it to anything, right? So whereas this one, because that's the base material, when it is instanced over here, that's where we can add our own maps, right? So for example, if we take a look at, let me peel that off and pop this back up here so we can flip between the two. So in here with the Megascan material, we have access to albedo, metallic, roughness, et cetera. We look at the instance, we have access to the same dials and switches, right? Metalness, roughness, normal, albedo. We can just simply change the map. So it's basically using this, but allowing us to swap out texture maps, right? So that's basically how the Megascans material works. And then this again becomes a material function, and then you can put that into a landscape, right? So two very, very different ways of organizing yourself in terms of materials, right? So basically, I took this master material, moved it off to the side, and this is our, I don't want to do our cobblestone rough. Let's go in and grab, we'll end off with this real quick. I just want to show you the cumulative result of the cut and paste operation. Did I close that? I closed that window. Right. So I'm going to come over to where I've got my materials. And so I'm going to bring back inside my layers. We've done our dirt. Let's just grab grass. There it is. Actually, I just minimized it. So move this over. So this is my grass. So I'm going to look for a good grass material in here, right? So if we find M underscore ground grass, right? So just double click this guy. Let's open up that ground grass, right? So this is, again, the grass from the starter content, right? And you can see that's the quality of it there. Not very good. That's all right. And so I'm going to come over here and grab all of this. Everything, right up to the material node. And I'm going to hit Control-C to copy it. Then I'm going to flip back over to where I've got my landscape, and I'm going to go into my grass material function here. And in the grass material function, I'm just going to zoom out a bit, make some room for it. Now it pastes where your mouse cursor is located, so I'm moving my mouse cursor over here and hitting Control-V, and it comes in, right? Oops. paste it in a different location, and I want to grab all of this while it's still selected and move it down, right? So we've got a couple of nodes here, right, that we can play with. I believe the roughness was just a constant, so plug that in, and then we've got the output of our normal map here, right? So again, we have no plugs in our material function, so I'm going to drag a wire out here, and I'm going to type in make material attributes. So it splits off those attributes for me and says it gives me now something I can plug into. And I'm just double checking the lerp node. I'll talk about what a lerp is in our afternoon session. Plug that into the color, plug this into the roughness, and plug this guy into the normal map. Now I've copy pasted from another Unreal Engine project, right? Well, this is what happens. We get errors because the textures are not connected. So I'm going to go into the micro texture variation, right, node, and I'll just show this to you real quick and we'll call it, right? So I need to reconnect my textures. I don't need this anymore, and I don't need this Unreal Engine project, so I'm going to close out of that, right? So I'm just going to bring back my content folder here, and I'm going to go to where I've got that texture library saved, and here, and there's my micro variation texture. With it selected, I'm going to go back into my material. So you can, I have it selected here in the content browser. I'm going to go back into my material that I copy pasted. I'm going to grab that texture sample, and here it's erroring out because there's nothing here. I'm just going to click this arrow that says use selected asset from content browser. Boom. Give it a minute to update. Job done, right? And then so I'm going to go through and I'm going to reconnect up all of these textures, base color texture. I'll just do that real quick. So I got base color texture for my grass. That would be ground grass right there. Select that texture sample, connect that up, right? And then that appears. We should be getting some color output. Maybe it won't let me because the whole chain is erroring out with missing textures. Yeah, it is. So this is erroring out because I need to make those connections here, and then we're good to go, right? So that's it. When we check back in after lunch for the afternoon session, we'll dive in and we'll make the third one, the stone one. Yeah, we made the dirt one, we'll make the stone one, and then we'll carry on from there. Any questions at all? Big smile. Nope, all good? Okay, so we'll break for lunch, and we'll see you guys here in an hour. What's that? Yeah, see you in a bit. Cheers.